Welcome to the Frank Marketing Podcast, where honest conversations, tested tactics, and no-nonsense marketing come together. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Frank Marketing Podcast. My name is Lee Buttry, PPC specialist and one half of Frank, and I'm joined, as always, by Zoe Ashbridge, our SEO expert. Today's episode is all about Google Analytics 4, Google Search Console, and Looker Studio. Which metrics are actually worth your time, and why so many dashboards create more confusion than clarity, and how marketers can focus on the numbers and genuinely influence decisions. If you've ever opened a dashboard full of charts and wondered which numbers really matter, this episode is for you. So hi Zoe, how are you?
Hi Lee, I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, had a good week. I've got quite a busy weekend, which is good. I've got into pickleball, I've got a tournament. I'm really optimistic about doing well in it. And I baked a sourdough this morning. I've got to bake a 3-layer pistachio and white chocolate cake this weekend for Stu's mum's birthday. Yeah, life is good. We had a good trip to London on Monday night. Lee and I had a very good trip to London on Monday night. We went down for an International Women's Day networking event. Got on the train at 5. We just had a very good night, a few drinks, and a very early start, which was a challenge. Yeah, but it was really good fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, we went a little bit hard on Monday, and I think just because we just haven't seen each other in person for ages, had we? And we were just nattering. And apologise to anyone who was on the train with us, because it was like a dead quiet train and it was just me and Zoe and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Tuesday was really good at the networking event.
Yeah, I loved it. We went really because it was our client, Social Pantry was hosting it. And really, we're kind of going for the meeting at the end of it to catch up with the marketing team, aren't we? And the event was just like something we had to do. But we actually ended up just love it. Like I would do that next year, for sure.
So
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was really good.
It was just nice to see so many inspiring kind of entrepreneurial women there as well, and hearing how they got to where they were. But also just even Kath Kidson was there, and I didn't realize she started the business in sort of her mid-30s, which kind of resonates with us a little bit.
I thought that. Yeah, big time. Yeah. It was good to see what our clients do as well, because obviously we know what they do, they do catering and stuff, but just seeing the finesse of it, and just seeing people busy at work and how it was organized, and they beautifully decorated the tables, didn't they? Got to taste the food. That was really good. I always think that as a freelancer or a consultant, you can get forgotten sometimes in the kind of experience of the product or a service, and I do think it's really, really important to get involved in that, because I think it ignites a bit of a fire for the client and the business when you see them in action or you try the product. So I think anyone who hires freelancers or consultants should send the product or get them to see the service.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Zoe, let's get into it.
On to the podcast, yeah. So, as Lee said, we're talking about metrics that are actually worth your time. We've got a very interesting stat here from Data Slayer. Dataslayer.ai, and they found that 40% of users say that dashboards don't help them make decisions. And that obviously raises a question about whether they're just reporting for insights or reporting just for the sake of it. What do you think of that, Lee? 40% of users say that dashboards don't help them? Because I'm shocked by that, actually.
I guess I need to understand who the user is. Is it the customer or is it the marketer? I would say this figure comes probably from the customer that the report is going to, more so than the marketer, perhaps.
Maybe.
But, I find sometimes reports can be so data overload and they're just fluffy sometimes. So I think it's quite a high number, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's surprising.
Really? That's interesting. I think the reason, but this is why I find it surprising. I think it's because it's a dashboard rather than a report. I don't know. So I'm thinking I think sometimes that people agencies sort of fall into the trap of reporting because they feel like they have to. So they report on metrics of whatever, and then no one's really getting any insights because they're just going through the motions. Whereas I think because it's a dashboard, I'm thinking someone's gone through the effort of creating it. They've put into it what they want. But I think I'm slightly biased because of how we create our dashboard. And I'm kind of assuming that everyone does it with the same intention that we do. Because I use our dashboards all the time. Like at least monthly, I'm in there checking stuff. And that's like at least monthly.
Yeah. I think our dashboards that we have provide two things. Myself and Zoe are very big on like when we meet with a client monthly, we rarely go through page by page because the dashboard is there for them to look at any time. It doesn't, unless it's telling a story, it's kind of not pointless, that's the wrong word, but it's not a productive meeting just to go through something that someone else can read. So we tend not to do that. And I think the dashboards for us are different in that sense that like it helps us as well remember what's happened. So when you do come to these meetings, you have that insight. They're always there. If someone's got a question, it's very easy to grab that data from because it's compiled like all data from all sources. Yeah, would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing is, unless you're like qualified to read a dashboard, like you've been doing it, you understand how to do it, it is meaningless, isn't it? No, yeah, what you said at the start of it, there has to be a story to
the data. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of, especially, I guess, agencies and freelancers and anyone in marketing, I think we get into this like it has to be done. Like you have to do this really long-winded report every month to kind of prove your worth. And I just sometimes just think it's so data heavy that it's just, if anything, going against you sometimes because you can hide behind a lot of data.
Yeah, it's true. That's definitely true. And I think also data is certainly, if you're tracking everything or trying to report on everything, it's really overwhelming.
Okay, right. So I guess today's podcast, myself and Zoe are going to be talking about the tools that we use, where we compile them and all that good stuff. So with us being quite, let's say, separate in terms of our skill set, we do look at different platforms. So the core platforms we use is GA4 or Google Analytics 4, which tracks users' behavior on your website, sources, engagement, conversions, and customer journeys. Zoe, we've got Google Search Console, which will show how your site wants Google search, impressions, clicks, ranking, and queries. I haven't actually put this on my list, but I use Google Ads or whichever platform that the client prefers. So that could even be Meta as well, and recently LinkedIn. And then what we do with all of this data is we compile it into our preferred choice of platform is Looker Studio. The reason being it's free for the most part, especially with Google products, which we're heavily using. There is a kind of a fee if you want to import Meta information on LinkedIn. You have to find a third party link for that, but they're not overly expensive. And that's kind of why we like it. We have a really nice template and that's how we use it. But I think having said that, I think more dashboards don't automatically mean better decision making. And I think many marketers take metrics simply because the platform reports them versus actually looking at what is useful. So Zoe, from an SEO perspective, what do you put in your dashboards and what do you find most useful for the client to either tell that story or anything else really? Like what do you actually focus on in your reports?
So I just add to the tools as well. I do use like third party tool, which is SEMrush. That's my preferred tool. There's other good ones out there, like Ahrefs is good and SE Ranking is good, but SEMrush is my preferred one. In terms of what I put in there, okay, so I kind of see data for SEO in like two like camps. Like there's one which is like the vanity metrics, but it's also the metrics you need because like they are like the first things that happen. So that's like clicks, impressions, click-through rate, although less so with like a vanity metric, but these are the metrics I like to keep an eye on because obviously if I'm not getting clicks or impressions, I'm never going to get a conversion. I also like to look at AI. So I look at traffic from AI and I'm looking purely at traffic. I don't do like loads of like prompt tracking just because I think it's hugely overwhelming just because people are searching for so many different things. So, and visits is tangible, isn't it? Like AI has said this many visits. That's really, I don't say it's anything that matters because visibility matters as well, but I'll just keep this simple because we're not talking about AI right now, we're talking about reporting. So all of those like good metrics, like kind of like advanced metrics a little bit, but also help me make decisions as a SEO specialist. And then with that, we're also looking at like conversions. I'm looking at like landing pages because I want to know where people are landing on, we always like to tie a conversion back to a particular landing page, so we know that a page we've created is converting. I think those are probably the main ones. I like to look at keywords in the rank tracker. I would put that in like the Vanity metric to some degree as well. So how many keywords we've got ranking. What about you, Lee? What would be the main ones for you?
Well, just to add on to yours bit, Zoe, actually, which I find a lot of people in reporting organically don't tie back conversions to organic things that I find, which I know you do, which I find really interesting. So when our reports, Zoe presents her reports, she has a section where it just focuses on what has come in organically and what has converted organically, which kind of then sets the scene, because it's not just about, oh, you've had this much traffic. It's like, is that traffic converting? That's the crux of it, isn't it? And I find that's kind of different, but you report on that I don't see a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And to add to that, actually, so like, yeah, for one, even just tracking revenue from organic SEO is not that commonly done. I think it should be. I think it's probably getting more common now, hopefully. But to add to that, one of the reasons why I like to track landing pages and conversions on certain landing pages is to see, again, to kind of bolster SEO's efforts and be like, hey, we asked for this page. So the problem with SEO is it does capture every single brand search pretty much, and ads does a little bit, but you can separate yours really easily. SEO can't look at a brand search and say, oh, and can look at a conversion to a page and know whether or not it was brand. So at least if SEO is asked for the page to be created, you can kind of prove your worth to some degree because you commissioned that page to be created. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then from a paid media point of view, there's so many vanity metrics. And I think paid media is easier to track conversions for sure, but that's just because you have a longer attribution window. You tend to have that than you do just looking at organic, especially on Google Analytics 4. So some metrics that I would focus on really is obviously cost is a huge thing. I always put this in there just for visibility that the client knows what money's been spent. Moving into that then is clicks and click-through rate. Clicks is a difficult one because clicks don't necessarily mean a campaign is working. Clicks can mean that you've got really broad keywords and you've had a shit ton of traffic that's probably not relevant. So clicks is a difficult one. But just for the sake of this, click-through rate, cost per click, cost per lead or cost per acquisition or cost per all conversion. And I really like to look at top impression share as well. So for anyone who's kind of new to marketing, that just looks at where we rank in terms of other competitors on similar keywords and such. And then that gets them broken down on a campaign stage. And the reason for this is I sometimes don't want to go that granular because it's different campaigns have different kind of intent. So prospecting for brand or a brand campaign is obviously going to be the highest converter. So that can kind of skew your overall data. And I bet very similar with organic actually, Zoe, isn't it? Brand can kind of skew your growth campaigns, if you like. And then again, retargeting. So I do like to break it down campaign by campaign as well, just so we can see what is working and what isn't.
Definitely. I think that what you just said there was quite interesting about like every campaign has different like purposes. And I think that's really difficult with getting that across to clients sometimes. Like sometimes I feel like the level of expertise in marketing is so like we know such a lot. So like your expert, any expert knows such a lot. And it is hard to like get that across in a report in a way that makes sense, because we were having a conversation recently and you were like, and it's so easy to do this. You were saying the campaign was converting at 3%. And then a client was like, okay, so we'll just double the money and convert at 6%. They're like, no, because you need to reach, all you're going to do then is reach 200,000 people instead of 100,000 people and still convert 3%. Do you know what I mean? I can remember that being a conversation, and it is hard to understand, I think.
Yeah. It is interesting because that kind of, you hear that quite a lot. Like if I just double budgets, I'm like, there is always going to be a ceiling with spend, especially if you're in a little bit of a niche market. The more money you chuck in doesn't necessarily mean more conversions. It can actually dilute your efforts. So that's kind of interesting. But it's nice to see when our reports is like, you can see a graph that says, okay, we've spent this much. And actually we've got a graph that looks at conversions. And it's like, okay, you spent an extra 500 this month. You did get more conversions, but you actually the next month spent 700 and you still got the same amount of conversions. So it's really nice for the customer to see that. Oh, okay, more spend doesn't necessarily mean more conversions. Okay, moving into, we've kind of touched on this, but moving into metrics that actually matter. So we've spoke a bit about vanity metrics, but Zoe, is there metrics that are more preferred on different platforms, and kind of what does that look like? So if we break it down from Google Analytics and Google Search Console and SEMrush, like where are you getting your information from and where is it most valuable to get it from?
Oh, okay. That's a really good question for SEO, I think. This is a good question because there are kind of circumstances where people rely entirely on a tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs or whatever to do things like position tracking or keyword research. And that is a good tool, don't get me wrong. It's like those tools are some of the best of the industry. They're expensive and they're good for a reason. But then they're not like actual data about your website. So, I would be concerned if I was working with someone who wasn't using Google Search Console for even keyword research and your traffic and positions to some degree, because that is actually your site data. So if someone searches something, then clicks your website, that is in Google Search Console. So it's like a real keyword that you're being found for. Anything listening to Google Search Console, you've got some kind of authority for. So in theory, it will be easier to improve rankings on it. There's, especially in like niche B2Bers, which is what we often do, there's going to be keywords that don't even come up in SEMrush with search volume. So they might not even show up, but they actually do exist, and you'll find those in your Google Search Console. SEMrush, because you can create reports and you can make it really easy to access information. So for example, if you want to monitor the keyword position or something, it is actually easier to use the position tracking tool in SEMrush to do that rather than manually doing it in Search Console all the time. I say that you could create dashboards in Looker Studio to do this, but for me, just the SEMrush is fine. Domain authority, that kind of thing. Get a little bit about on AI visibility. There will be loads of other stuff. All the site audit stuff happens in SEMrush. And then analytics. Now, analytics is quite obvious. It's just kind of open, doesn't it? So we look at traffic, I look at conversions to analytics. So we do look for the most part at I look at last touch. And then we always tell our clients that the data is a bit weird because I'm looking at last touch there. We look at last touch, but there's also touch points in there. So if an ad was clicked a month ago or whatever, it might influence an SEO conversion, for example. I like the AI side of analytics. So we create our Looker Studio. This is all inspired by Carl Rushton, we talk about all the time, but he taught us how to do the dashboard for AI visits. We use Google Analytics for that. We'll have to link his article on now because he's got a report that he shares and a step-by-step guide on how to do it. Probably I would say analytics is more of an umbrella overview. So we report for one client and we give them, here's what's happened on your website with last touch for every single marketing channel, because we just help them understand their data there. And then we go into the granularity of here's what happened with SEO and here's what happens with ads. And then obviously you kind of expect there to be some conversions are kind of accounted for twice doing that, right?
Yeah.
Which is a bit weird, but you have to look at the channel level as well as overall, I guess.
Yeah, channel level gives you can see it working on a channel level. But I guess what GA4 does, it gives you that bigger picture of what the customer journey looks like. So GA4 is really great at exploration maps. I really like the touch point tool on it. I know there's a bit of contest about this in the industry, but I think although it's not probably 100% right, I think it's good enough to understand how often a user touches the website before converting, how long it takes. It's not an exact science, but I think it's good enough data that you can then make decisions off. And I think when you're doing a report that has all of these different channels, it's very easy for a client to be this is incorrect because this channel's got this and this channel's got that. But what you need to be doing is educating people and saying, look, all channels are helping to drive a force. It's up to us then to say, this worked at this level, and then they came back organically and that worked at that level. So it might be that attribution gets done and conversions get counted twice overall, especially if you're looking at singular platforms, but it's educating users on that customer journey.
One thing you said there about the data being it's not always the most accurate. Honestly, I think that is true for all data in marketing. And I think if anyone tells you that you've got a perfect picture of anything, it's just false. But I think the important thing is to pick how you're going to slice your data, pick what you're going to focus on, then don't change. Don't use Search Console for clicks and then go and flick to SEMrush. Look for trends over time, isn't it? And patterns, because as long as you stick to the same tool, you'll get that.
I had a conversation with someone this week, actually, I think it was Monday, where they weren't happy with what GA4 was reporting and they were comparing it to Shopify. And I had to explain to them, they'd have different attribution models. Google is always going to favor, whether we like it or not, Google products. Shopify is going to favor their Shopify data. Meta is going to prefer their data. And they're never going to align. You're never going to get that ever. But what you need to do is look at one single source of truth and stick to it. If you're wanting a very unbiased attribution tool, they are out there. They cost an arm and a leg, but you've got, I think it's Triple Whale, you've got Dream Data, all of these things you can do if you're needing that. And I think that comes probably more down to very large accounts who have a lot of data going in, a lot of channels. Maybe it's more e-commerce because they've got a lot of pages. I think that's probably where that suits better because you are more focused on return on ad spend. We aren't as focused on return on ad spend. We're focused on quality of leads. So we don't need that sort of huge granularity there. And especially when we're working with niche businesses with conversions, I normally get access to their CRM. So I can kind of map out exactly which leads are coming in. And again, they don't get huge amounts of leads. So it's very easy to do. If you needed that data, you would have to probably get this automation. But yeah, I went on a bit of a tangent then. Sorry.
No, I think it would make total sense. But like to add to it as well, like with something like Triple Whale or Dream Data or whatever, I mean, I do question how much extra and how much insights you get from that, to be honest. Like, I mean, they're great tools. We've used both of those over time. But you need someone to like set them up. You need and then you need almost like a person who's like the manager of the data because there's so much of it. And then realistically, people don't have time to do that often. Like, it's almost like a full-time job, just like looking after data. And I don't know how much it helps, to be honest.
You can get really hung up on it. And I get like budgets are tight. You need to make that pound work harder for you. But I do think you can get 80% accurate data from all of this and make a well enough educated guess to understand what's working and what's not.
That's kind of my thought as well.
Yeah. Cool. Then I'm just going to briefly touch then on PPC metrics that actually influence kind of decision making. I've touched briefly just then on conversions and monitoring conversion quality, but what the first step first is conversion tracking. If that is not set up correctly, this data is going to be useless to you. So go back to basics, conversion tracking, understand what is a conversion should always be something that impacts business, i.e., is it a contact form? Is it a sale? Is it an email click? Is it a phone click? It should never be about behavior. If you're tracking behavioral events as conversions, which you can do in Google Ads at the moment, your metrics are going to be so inflated. You're going to be telling Google to optimize for the wrong thing. This goes across all platforms as well, might I add. So conversions first. I'd look at cost per lead. Now, cost per lead is kind of a bit of a false economy because I had a client who we're actually going to see later who we set up a maximized conversions campaign for a performance max on Google. What happened with that data is they apparently had like 15 conversions, which on surface level looks great. Cost per lead is down. It looks like they're getting the conversions in. Without looking at their CRM, I would have just rolled with that and been like, oh my God, this campaign's great. But I looked at their CRM and it was all trash. So it was like, nope, that's not working for us. Turn that off. So cost per acquisition is a big one. I think surface level, I don't think cost per acquisition necessarily needs to be low as long as the quality is coming in and the client is happy to pay for that. And then just tying that all back, cost per click, a lot of people are like, oh, we want to get the cost per click down. But if you have a low cost per click, you're generally driving broader keywords, which generally drives rubbish quality leads, basically. So cost per click is a bit of a weird one. I don't necessarily look at that anymore, and I don't think really people should. Especially, it differs so differently from industry to industry as well. If you've got something that's very competitive, that cost per click is going to be really high, but you need it to be high to make sure you're getting that quality of lead in. So those are some things that I kind of look at. I do think click-through rate's great. It's not the be all and end all, but click-through rate tells me like that the ads are actually providing what the user wants off their search. A higher click-through rate normally means that the intent is there. A lower click-through rate means we need to do some adjustment. So those are the things that I look for sure. moving into then, like, how do we avoid drowning in dashboards? So Zoe, have you got any advice here?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because that is the kind of antidote to all this, isn't it? I think for us, we work very much with a goal, with a campaign. So we know what we need to know to determine whether or not that campaign was a success or not. And I suppose that's the main way, isn't it? So rather than looking at everything, we look at metrics related to the campaign we're running and whether or not that was useful. So like, is the landing page converting? Are the ads getting the right types of audiences? Then looking at the contact forms. And I think if you work like that, you can get into the data a bit more. Like you said, you can go and cross-reference the quantity of contact forms with the quality in the CRM and make sure that we're doing the right stuff. I think that's probably the key thing, isn't it? Is to, decide what outcomes you want to make sure you're getting them and kind of like worry less. Like I don't really care if I'm getting very few clicks something, if those clicks are converted, even if it's like a few. Like we're working in really niche B2B sometimes. So sometimes like if we get one lead, like that's smashing, isn't it? One good lead, that's really good and it's worth a lot of money. Isn't it? It's all that really matters. So, if you don't need loads of clicks, then don't even look at it and don't worry about it. But you will always need to get enough conversions, and what enough looks like depends on the business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the things, with starting with a client, we ask them, what are their business goals? It differs for everyone. Yes, it's very easy to feel like, oh, everyone just wants more leads, more sales. But like, what does that actually look like for you? And that it goes down to like, understanding, okay, do you get leads from phone calls? Some people will go, no, okay, then we know not to focus on that. Some people will be like, absolutely, we get so many leads. Okay, that's something we need to focus on. That needs to be in the report. Understanding what they want in the report as well. Some people prefer to a very, I guess, more visually aligned than wordy stuff. So, and that takes into account of who you're dealing with and who's gonna be looking at that report. If it's so text heavy and that your client is very visually driven, then you need more graphs in there that they can visually see data. Like if it's progressing, depends on what data you're looking at. I mean, for Zoe, for your keyword positions, they need to be able to see that going up higher. For me, it's that conversion versus cost. People prefer to see that. So understanding the client really of what they want. And you can push back. I don't think you need to have everything in there, but I think finding out the best metrics that mean business success and and then the next step is how do you visualize that on a dashboard?
Yeah, those are really good tips, I think.
So I think one of the things that we need to, I guess, talk about then is like, how do our dashboards like highlight, I guess, trends? I think I've just mentioned that with graphs and stuff, but is there anything to add to that, Zoe?
No, not really. I think the graphs do a lot of the heavy lifting there, don't they? We always, so you can see like on our dashboards, conversions like being for the year leading up to the point and in 2005 now, so early in 2026. So you can see even in the graph, March versus March or March versus February or whatever. To be fair, with highlighting trends, but one thing we do on one of our client reports is we have like a highlight section, which just bullet points. I mean, like sometimes reporting in honestly, like the clients, I just don't really care for the data that much, as long as the outcomes are good. So we have like a highlight section where we just bullet point like some really key things. So like AI conversion is really good, or we put this new landing page live, and these are just the stories or the tangible bits of data that the client, and also these are the things the client can go and share with stakeholders, and that's all they really care about is like the action and the outcome.
I would say like the clients that we work on together aren't really bothered about the reporting data. And the reason I say this is because in a business, if something's not working, they can already feel it.
Yeah, totally agree.
So for me to then come around and go, oh yeah, 3 weeks later, oh, here's your report. By the way, you got less leads because we stopped this campaign. They already know this. They've already felt it before that data gets to them. So that data then becomes a bit like redundant.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. It's like a untangible part of like business, isn't it? I think you kind of just know when things are off sometimes.
Yeah, and I think it's great to have the report to look back on, because then we can, I don't know, if 6 months' time we can go, what happened in March? Oh, well, actually, if we look back, this is what happened. We can look at the highlights. We can look at what the graphs are saying. I think it's good on that aspect. But sometimes if you're waiting, the beginning of the month to write the report, then you're meeting them the second week. It's really, that date is just so old that it doesn't really matter anymore. I think you need to be using your monthly reports and monthly meetings with clients is to get to the crux of like what worked well, what didn't work well, and where do we move forward.
One thing I was going to say with talking about to clients through your dashboard, I just mentioned this is what I was going to say. I mentioned the highlight thing for the client. We also like split so in Looker Studio, you can split your dashboard up how you like, and there's like a menu. And we always have like at the top, the stuff the client wants. And then at the end is like the stuff that we kind of want to review in a dashboard, but the client doesn't necessarily need to read through all that. So for them, this I don't know what it is, actually, I don't know off the top of my head, 25 tabs, Looker Studio report, only 5 tabs at the top are the ones the clients really need, and then the others are just for us. For the data is there for them in real time if ever they want it. And I quite like that about Looker Studio. It's like, so this one I find today, to some degree, the things we put in the report, because we always do a little list of work completed or whatever, is a bit of arse covering as well, because you won't remember what you've done in 6 months if ever you were challenged on it. So we like to record it all. Then in Looker Studio, it's all just there, and it's also on a Google Sheet as well, because it pulls from that Google Sheet. So yeah, you can basically segment your reports so that people aren't overwhelmed, they get what they need, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. I think we can go into some tips and takeaways then. So just some tips from this, and focusing on metrics that actually connect to business outcomes and not just look good in reports. Use GA4 to understand behaviors of conversion, volume. Lean on Google Search Console for queries, visibility trends, and then tying all that into kind of Looker Studio is great. And the same can be done with all of the paid media if you'll do paid media. So it's looking at indicators that reflect business performance across engagement, conversions and revenue, if that's what you're driving. And use reporting as a guide. It's never going to be 100% accurate. So use it as a guide to make decisions is my biggest takeaway, to be honest. Yeah, use it as an educated guess, really. Zoe, we have some questions from LinkedIn, if you would.
Okay, so we kind of naturally covered all these off. So which GA4 metrics actually matter? I think we've probably just covered that off pretty naturally. Is Google Search Console still useful, or are its insights too limited? Definitely still useful. I don't think you can realistically not have it and do good SEO, to be honest. Maybe that's a little bit harsh, but it's such a good tool. It's free as well, so why would you not be using it? Are impressions and clicks still meaningful when AI answers reduce website visits? I think that's a really good question. And I will say, yes, they are still meaningful. So obviously they are declining. Impressions, not so much, but clicks are still declining. But if clicks are declining, then it's still feedback on the content. It doesn't make the content worthless, because if it's getting AI visibility, citations, and mentions, and maybe even you're seeing traffic coming to that page from an AI source, then it's absolutely worth it. And also visibility is worth it. And that's really important now more than ever, because people are searching in AI early on. So if you're not available in AI, you might never make a shortlist. You might never ever get onto someone's radar. So yeah, they still matter, basically. That's the long and short of it for the purpose of this. I think we could do a whole other podcast on it, but what should marketers actually be tracking in Looker dashboards? So that kind of goes back to the meaningful data, doesn't it? The stuff you actually need to make decisions. And how do you prove SEO impact and reporting to leadership? I think probably, like I said earlier, conversions, absolutely. Probably looking at landing pages and pages that are converted on, because, it's easy for them to say, well, it's just branded search, but that conversion may not have happened if you hadn't create a page with that serves the intent and that has a good enough UX to actually convert. So I think SEO can build its credibility and role in marketing through that way.
Amazing. Well, I feel like we've covered the basics of reporting. We haven't gone too in depth, but if you're interested in templates or anything like that, feel free to reach out. I'm sure we would happily sort of help or sell you a template, whatever that looks like. So yeah, thank you for listening. Next topic we'll be talking about is building small relevant audiences, how to do it and why it matters. This relates heavily with on more niche businesses, but I do think it can relate to a lot of others. Instead of trying to do a catch-all for every audience, it's trying to identify those audiences and how we get them to convert. So if you enjoyed this episode, Subscribe to the Frank Marketing podcast, follow us on LinkedIn, and carry on the conversation with us over on LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Frank Marketing podcast. We'll be releasing a new episode every month, so don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We look forward to seeing you on the next one.